Hey, it's James here from Guitarist.com, and welcome back to 30 Days of Guitar. Today is day 14. It's the end of our second week playing guitar together, and we have plenty to work on at this point. So today, I want to take some time to just kind of process everything that we've done so far and work on kind of making the whole process a lot more efficient, getting motivated and doing that sort of thing. I have a bunch of tips to share with you, and before I reveal them, I just want to quickly mention, if you haven't gotten the free ebook, please check it out. Also, my complete beginner's course is going to help you get through the entire thing, from absolute beginner to confidence drummer. I'll put links to all that stuff. Anyways, my first tip is to get a guitar stand so that you can leave your guitar out. When your guitar is in the case, there's just a couple more steps, that you have to do to get it out. Of course, if you live in like a crazy climate and your guitar has to be in the case, we can make exceptions. But for the most part, if you can leave your guitar somewhere where you're going to always kind of walk by it and it's just there, it's so easy to just put it in your lap and, start playing. And that's my second tip is if you don't feel like playing or practicing, don't make a big thing out of it. Don't think, okay, I have to practice, and if I don't practice, I'll be a failure, etc. I've gone through this all like 100 times myself. And something I found that really works for me is to just sit down with the guitar. That's it. That's all I'm committing to. And maybe doing a little warm-up, something that's really easy, like that warm-up that we worked on where we, put down our fingers and just go like that, and that's it. That's all you got to commit to. And you might find after you're done warming up that you feel like playing, and you're going to keep practicing. When it comes to playing guitar, it is important to warm up, to activate your fingers, as we already discussed. But it's also important to be aware of something that, I went to a physio. I had tendonitis from playing piano because I didn't play piano correctly. I put all my time and effort into playing guitar, but in music school, we had to pass some piano class that I just, did whatever, great, passed the class kind of thing. So I'm not that interested in playing piano. Sue me. And I developed tendonitis from it, which really sucked. And I went to my teacher and I was like, my arms are starting to hurt. And he's like, oh yeah, do this exercise. Like, do these stretches. It works for me, blah, blah, blah. And it wasn't getting any better. So I went to a physiotherapist and like one who specializes with musicians and their hands. And I showed them what I was doing. And they're like, you should not do that. They assessed me. They figured out what my problem was. And they're like, that exercise is making it worse. So like a little light bulb went off in my head. Like, oh, you shouldn't just share your exercises with other people. Everybody's unique, right? So I just want you to be aware that if you look on Google, like guitar stretches or whatever, a lot of them, they all show you that stretch, and that might not be the right one for you, So you do need to figure out your own physiology and your own thing. And I don't want you to hurt yourself because an underqualified guitar teacher is giving medical advice, and that's my whole thing is that I won't give you medical advice, obviously, right? I'll give you advice on how to practice, how to play guitar, but, don't do that. But as far as like warm-ups that are safe to do, I think, things that are going to be happening on guitar. Like on guitar, you are going to be pressing the frets. So it's fine to just kind of open your hand. Don't like over squeeze or anything, but just do this a little bit. It's totally fine. I'm not squeezing. I'm just opening my fingers and closing them, right? You can do that on both hands. You can mute the strings and just do some down and up strokes just like that. Just have some fun with it. You could even play a song like on the radio or whatever, and you could just try to play downstrokes to it. To kind of help warm up your timing as well, right? That's a great exercise that I like to show my students. The warm-up that we went over, where we put down our fingers, that one's incredible. So that's obviously a great one to do too. And it doesn't take too much, but it is worth it to warm up and to make sure that your hand health and everything is okay. We already talked a little bit about when and how much to practice for. And I just want to mention that again because it is important to be consistent versus putting in big hours. If I'm teaching somebody, I can tell that they just practiced like 2 hours right before our lesson, but they didn't do anything all week. A person who practices 15 minutes a day is going to get way further than somebody who practices for 2 hours and then goes like 6 days without practicing and then practices for another hour or two. Because you kind of forget everything. Let's say you practice 2 hours on Sunday Then you do nothing on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, etc. By the time you get to next Sunday, you're going to spend half your practice time trying to remember what you were doing, trying to get it back under your fingers, Whereas if you practice 15 minutes on Sunday and then on Monday you go to practice again, it's going to be really easy to pick up where you left off, especially if you write down what you were doing, and there's just so much to it, right? Consistent practice is absolute king. So make sure that you do a bunch of little practice sessions. You could even do a couple a day. That's a really good way to do it. Let's say you wake up, have your coffee or whatever, give it 10, 15 minutes, practice a little bit. And then maybe later in the day, have another practice session. That would, that adds up so much more than having big, huge practice sessions with big breaks between them. Another thing is that when you're just getting started, it only takes like 15 minutes a day. But as you progress further and further, you're going to have more stuff to work on, and it's going to be more engaging, and it's going to be easy to have a half an hour practice session and then maybe an hour-long practice session, as you get more and more into it. So don't worry if you're not practicing for like an hour, right? I wouldn't want somebody in this phase of learning to put pressure on themselves to do that. You're welcome to, but it's not until later that you really need to put in more and more time to get further, right? Now I want to talk about some things that, basically the things that have made me feel like quitting, and what has gotten me out of that mindset, right? It's important to acknowledge that we're all going to run into these roadblocks, and that learning guitar can be quite challenging, and it might be discouraging at some points. Something my wife always tells me, and this relates to playing guitar and to my YouTube channel, to a lot of things, is to stay in your own lane, and that comparison is the thief of joy. That's a Christina Emmett quote right there. Because we all have a tendency to say like, oh, I have that friend who's way better than me at guitar, and he's playing gigs I don't think I'll ever be able to because, I'm not as good as he is. And when it comes to like YouTube channels, like, well, Paul Davis has 3 million subscribers or whatever, I don't have that. How am I going to get there someday? And it's discouraging when you compare yourself to others, right? So, you just have to like stay in your own lane, do your own thing, focus on you and making yourself a better person. There's that story that's been told a million times about, somebody who's like, 10 years ago, I wanted to learn how to do something. Like 10 years ago, I wanted to learn how to play guitar, and I didn't. But I wish I did start 10 years ago because now I'd have 10 years of experience. And it's like, well, what about starting today? And then 10 years from now, the story will be different. You'll be thanking the person. You'll be thanking, future you will thank you right now for, following through with it and doing it. We can almost do like a little mind game where we imagine we have a friend who's going through these struggles. Like, what would you say to them? You have a friend who's been playing guitar and they can do a few things on guitar, but they feel like quitting, and what kind of talk would you have with them? And maybe you can have that kind of talk with yourself. Something that you may not believe, but I can assure you, you are more talented than you think. Everybody has the music inside them as long as they have a love for music. If you want to do it, you can do it. I guarantee it. I started my teaching career with students who were on their like last limb. They had maybe seen 3 or 4 teachers over the years, and then they decided, hell, I'm going to try one more time. They take lessons with me, and they stuck with it, not because, I'm some great or magical teacher, but because I was able to pinpoint their issues and we worked on them. It wasn't about quantity, it was about quality. It was about developing that internal sense of rhythm instead of just focusing on downstrokes and upstrokes, all these little things. And every one of my students had something special about them, something that made them, they loved certain aspects of music, and they had certain talents that they didn't let themselves realize because they were always focusing on what was wrong with their playing, right? So we did that, right? And I've helped, like tons of people reach those goals. And at the end of the day, there's all these things that make us feel like that we don't have a chance, not enough time. That's a huge one, that I should have done this sooner. I don't think it's about time. I think it's about direction. With the right direction, you can totally reach your goals if you just focus on what's important. And, that's what Good Guitarist is here for. That's what I've been building all these years, is something that will that'll help you do that. So yeah, that's pretty much all I wanted to talk about today, was just some tips, some motivation, some of the philosophy around learning guitar, because we've all hit those walls, we've all hit those roadblocks, I guess you could call them, and it's important to persevere. That's the one thing that's gonna make the difference, is to keep going even when you don't feel like things are working out. They will. I can assure you, they always do, right? So with that said, that concludes our lesson. Have a fun time practicing and all that. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Grab my free ebook. If you want that guided tour, all the way from start to finish, and somebody to practice along with you, all the backing tracks, everything, the visuals, all of it, I do have my complete beginner's course, and I'll put a link to that in the corner and down below. Otherwise, have a fun time practicing, and I'll see you tomorrow for the beginning of week 3.